Hey, welcome back to Unedited. This week, we're excited to chat with you. I'm Ethan, joined by Jordan.
I was going in to say my name. I thought you were going to throw me off the bus
I'm
there
not
like last
do that
time.
to you. I've decided I've stopped doing that. I'm just going to say your name, and it's up to you to do what you want when you introduce me.
Sounds better to me.
But we have a great episode this week. We're excited. Jordan has a feed item he's going to share. We're going to parlay over something, which I think is going to get really interesting. We're going to talk about In The Neighbourhood. Jordan actually spoke a couple weeks ago at the Neighbourhood Church. We're going to talk about that and unpack it a bit. And we're finishing off with, how about you? Some interactions from you guys, your comments, your feedback. So it's going to be a good episode.
Looking forward to it.
How was your day so far?
You know, it's been pretty good, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What were you up to?
Yeah. Played a little golf. It was nice.
Okay.
So, yeah, I got out and about.
Yeah.
So I made 6 pars. So anytime I play golf and I can make 6 pars, it turned out to be an okay day.
Yeah, I know
so
nothing
we
about golf.
We won't talk about the double bogeys that I made. But
okay.
But the 6 pars were great.
You lost me with the bogeys.
Yeah. A bogey is 1 over par. So if par's 4, bogey's 5, a double's 6.
Okay. And
I didn't take a triple. So that's a beauty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're pretty good at golf.
One of the people I played with, though, took an 8 on the last hole, and it was a par 3. But I'm not going to mention their names.
I would love it if you would just drop their name to try and publicly shame them.
I'll tell you later. I actually felt bad for him because he was playing a stellar back nine. Stellar. Very good back nine. So what do you think rattled? Impressive back nine, to be honest with you.
What do you think rattled his cage?
I don't know. Just bad hole. Sometimes that's how golf is. That's why golf's tough, because it's an unforgiving sport. So
interesting.
This is going to lead well into my feed item, actually, this discussion right now.
Is it really? Well, let's get right into it. In my feed.
In my feed.
Okay, let's do it. So this is kind of a feed item, but it's also something that I did this last week. I watched the presidential debate. Now, this isn't going to get too political, but we're going to talk about something that was funny during that whole debate that Biden and Trump had. Now,
can I just pause you before you get into it?
Yeah.
Of course you watched the presidential debate. It just checks out that
I don't always do this, but this time I felt like this could be interesting, right? And it was honestly tough to watch, if I'm going to be straightforward with you.
Yeah,
and I'm not taking any sides here, but like back and forth, there was just things happening, and like you know, you could read all about it online.
Yeah.
But there was this one moment of, just for me, it was pure comedy. For other people, it might have been eye rolls or wondering what was going on, right?
Yeah.
But you got two people here just trashing each other back and forth. Like, they were getting pretty heated at some points, right?
Oh boy. Okay.
And like, you're the worst president ever. You're the worst president ever. You're the worst president ever, right? And they're exchanging barbs, and that's kind of what you have during debates, right? That's usually what happens during these kinds of occasions. Now, the last ones they had, I guess it would have been 4 years ago, were a lot more intense. Anyhow, so they're going back and forth, and all of a sudden, I'll just read the headline to you. Biden and Trump clashed over golf at debate, but who really is the best golfer? And so they're literally having this fight on TV in front of everyone, and then Donald Trump starts talking about his golf swing.
Seriously?
And starts going on about how he's a much better golfer, because he was talking about, I think he was talking about his health at that point, and mentioned he won a couple club championships, and mentioned that he, you know, his accomplishments on the golf course. And then, you know, which when I was watching this in real time, I was like, oh man, this isn't the time and place for this, right? To be talking about golf, right?
Yeah.
But then Joe Biden just completely took the hook, line, and sinker. And instead of like responding with something like, you know, we're here to talk about presidential manners and acting all smug about the thing, right? He just takes the bait, and then he comes back at him about his golf swing, about how he's a better golfer, about how he had a 6 handicap, which if Joe Biden has a 6 handicap, he's an incredible golfer.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's quite good, actually.
Explain to me and anybody else what a handicap is.
Okay, handicap is your score. It's kind of your average of scores of where you end up with, and you want to be low on the spectrum. Golf, you always want to be minus. You always want to be under. You're not going higher. You're going minus, right?
Yep.
You want to take less shots, and so your handicap just designates where you're at in your golf game. And so if Joe Biden, like so for me, my handicap for golf would be somewhere like a 15 likely.
Okay.
Like somewhere in there. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Somewhere between 10 and 20, I'm sure. Maybe even higher. I can't say for sure.
So that means
but
that
no
you're usually 15 over the par of the course.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm probably actually a little higher, because I've turned into a bit more of a 90s golfer rather than an 80s golfer. Okay. But you know, for Joe to suggest that he was a 6, like Donald went at him, and they had this big golf bar like fight going on. It was actually absolutely hilarious. And in the moment, like Twitter just lit up at that point, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was just like sending like, people stuff like, is this really happening? Is this really what we're watching here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in some ways, for me, it felt kind of refreshing. Jamie Nye, who's a sports guy on News Talk 650 here in Saskatchewan, tweeted, "I turned to the CFL and now they started talking about golf. Man, I missed the most important part of the debate. Good golfers make good leaders, obviously, right?" And Mike Commodore, a former NHL player, wrote, "I can't stop laughing. I cannot believe golf indexes and golf swings came up. Ha 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 ha." Right?
Okay.
And for me, the part that shocked me was here you are dissing each other for like 45 minutes straight. And then things finally get personal once you bring golf in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden things got personal once they started talking about their golf swing.
I have a theory though, Jordan.
So it was kind of funny.
I have a theory about this because it sounds super goofy.
It
sounds
is
super off the wall.
It feels like
But
it was, yeah.
Immediately when you brought up how Trump was trying to use it, I didn't watch. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Okay.
Trump trying to talk about his health.
Yeah.
He was criticized for his health. Joe
Yeah.
Biden's criticized for his health.
Yes.
So they're probably,
Yeah.
it's golf, but it's probably really they're trying to make a statement about their able-bodiedness, right?
That's exactly what Trump was trying to do. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he was doing. And he was basically saying, like, I just won 2 club championships. You got to be in good shape to do that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then Joe wanted to come in about his, and apparently Donald had, one of them have challenged each other to a golf match. So you had golf pros like Bryson DeChambeau, who just won the U.S. Open, like one of the biggest majors tournaments of the year.
Yeah.
Who he has like this YouTube channel that gets crazy hits, and he's like, please let me set up this match.
Okay.
I'll sanction this thing, right? Trump versus Biden, man. Let's settle this thing right on the links, right?
Wow.
So it was hilarious, and like you could read the feedback to read about who thought who won the debate or who did what in the debate, but I just found that hilarious, and I found the headlines the next day kind of funny that you could trash each other about your professional career all day, but don't you dare talk about my golf game, right? I mean, as a golfer, I kind of get this stuff, right? I think a lot of golfers out there can kind of relate to this.
Yeah,
so
sure, yeah.
that's my feed item.
That's really interesting.
Found it kind of funny, yeah.
Yeah, it is funny. It's
Yeah.
funny and a little bit sad.
There's a sadness to it, I guess.
Yeah, there's
eh?
a certain level of sobriety that brings about where you're like, huh, okay.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I
that's
wonder
what
if
we're
that's why the media ran with it so much, because maybe the debate was so heavy hitting each way
doing.
that maybe that left a little almost like humor for
Yeah,
people, right? Like
yeah,
like a little like funny moment. Like I think one of them ended the segment by saying, "Let's not be childish here," right? Like,
Right.
because it did sound like they were kind of having a little contest there, like to see
Yeah.
who is a better golfer.
Well,
in
with
front
the
of the world.
political system that's so divided in the States right now, and we're not incredibly different than that, but
Mhm.
particularly, like, we obviously see a lot of American news about the division. And,
Yeah.
it's almost kind of nice to have a little bit of a reminder. There's sort of a human after all element there where it's like,
Yeah.
they're talking about golf. They're
Yeah.
talking about, they're both getting as offended or whatever. I'm just talking based off of what I heard you say, because
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
But, that's a little nice kind of cherry on top. If it's like, if we're gonna
I
have a
think so.
crazy, like,
Yeah.
super them treating each other very like
Harshly.
harshly, yeah. Maybe it's nice to just have a little bit of humanity show through. I don't know.
Little
But
golf. Yeah. Who do you think would win a golf match?
I don't know.
No predictions?
I don't.
No, I don't know either.
And I
Prob-
honestly, even
probably,
if I,
probably Trump, I would think, just because the guy owns golf courses and as like really like solidified like that he's a golfer, and if he did win those 2 club championships, that's actually kind of impressive from a golf perspective.
see,
So-
you're even going where I
so-
won't go, because
but
I was just about to say.
I don't
even
know
if-
though. Maybe Biden could take him though if he has a 6 handicap and he's not lying about it. Sorry, I'm having too much fun here.
Yeah, you're getting carried away. We gotta rein you in here. We gotta rein you in. Enough
All
talk
right.
about presidents at golf.
Sorry,
you know?
sorry.
I was gonna say, even
this
if
is important stuff, I'm telling you.
it is important. I was gonna say, even if I had an idea of one of them, I wouldn't make a comment about it.
Yeah.
But you're going for it.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and you talk about it.
I
But
have no idea who would win.
I'll keep my mouth shut about
You know,
that.
we'll call it a draw, and they'll have to play a playoff on hole 18,
Okay.
and we'll see who takes it, win or draw.
Okay.
Hole 18, just like the pros.
Well, come back for Unedited episode 9, where we will have a recap. When maybe they'll have a golf tournament or something in the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see if Jordan's got some updates on presidential golf.
We'll see if there's a match. Yeah. We'll see
Yeah.
if there's a match. So if there's ever a match, we're talking about it. So.
Okay, well, let's get into another segment here. That's in my feed. Thanks, Jordan, for bringing that. It
was just fun.
I appreciate that you brought it because introduces stuff that I would not ever think of or ever catch. So the fact that you brought it up means that I'm informed on something I wouldn't have been otherwise. So
it's making its rounds, yeah.
Yeah. But I had an interesting idea this week, and I'm wondering if you would parlay with me.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
I'm
parlay.
in.
Parley.
Last week, we were talking about music quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you and I both care about music quite a bit.
We
and
do.
we talked about it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But after we recorded and I went home and I was just thinking about it, I was thinking about the interview with the Uplift Duo, John and Christina, and I was just feeling really encouraged by that. And I love music, I love art, and it made me just start thinking, we had talked about what did you last listen to, what's your favorite genre, and truthfully, something that I get a lot of pushback on sometimes is metal music, where people are like, you like that? Why do you like that? Oh, it sounds so angry. It sounds so mean, or it's so dark, or it's
Yeah.
And that we're not going to talk about metal today.
Okay.
That's not the point of the parlay.
Okay.
But what I do want to talk about is it makes me think about the broader picture of art, and even just how Christians approach art as expression, as as something that we consume or participate in, or however you want to say that. And I want to ask you this question. I have some thoughts, and I'm just kind of catching you blind with this, so I'm going to get a genuine reaction from you. I want to ask, can art be bad?
Can art be bad?
So let me set it up for you, but
Okay.
think about that.
Yeah.
And this is everybody listening and watching. You're going to get Jordan's initial responses. I did not prep him with this question. So what I mean by that is kind of two different things. The first is, can art just be poor, not good,
okay.
Not well done?
Yeah.
But also, sort of taking a different meaning of bad, can art be negatively impacting the world around it? Can art bring more darkness than light? Can the act of creating something actually be a destructive pursuit? And so I kind of want to talk about those in two different ways, but I bet you're thinking about something already. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought about whether it could be poor is that art is always in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe in some senses I could look at something and think it's not overly impressive, and someone else could think it's amazing, right? So there's that back and forth clash in that sense. It's like people who like certain styles of music that I can't comprehend why you would ever want to listen to.
Yeah.
They would listen to my stuff and do the exact same thing and try to comprehend why I'm listening to what I'm listening to, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's differences of opinions for sure, and whether something can be poor, I don't like to say that it can be poor in the sense of somebody probably put a lot of hard work in that and invested their time and energy and their soul into it, right? So I wouldn't want to necessarily, my opinion about a piece or something. Let's just take a painting, for example. If one of us saw a painting and you thought it was just the best thing ever, and I looked at it and just thought, it's okay, right?
Yep.
It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that for me, my perception, my reaction to it was that it wasn't jaw-dropping. It wasn't amazing. But it doesn't mean it wasn't for someone else. Someone else could look at that thing and think, oh my goodness, this is I need to own this, right? So,
as the beholder, the beauty isn't there for you.
Yeah.
It's a subjective thing.
that's how I see art to an extent. It has to be, because there's a lot of stuff out there where some people just think is absolutely amazing and beautiful, or sounds great, or this movie is just fantastic, right? And the rest of us shake our heads like that was a waste of 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's another thing that got me thinking about it. It's because we were talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey
there you
last
go.
week. And that movie is who did I talk to? I talked to somebody immediately after the podcast about it, and they were saying they hated it. They just did not like the movie. It was just not their thing. And I didn't even feel defensive, because I was like, it's a movie that you either love it or hate it. It's not a movie that really puts a lot of people in the middle of the road,
Yeah.
And that's art, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like that.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about this, because you're a father, so you've got girls who probably bring you drawings and stuff. But I remember the first time that I experienced art in a way that was probably typically not well performed, but then I had such an emotional response to it, and I continue to have emotional responses to this. And what I'm speaking of specifically is young people singing or playing music in a band. So you go to like a school recital or something.
Yeah.
And I went to this one specifically. It was my younger cousin who had a choral, what's it called? I just said it. A choral, not rehearsal. What's the word I'm looking for?
Recital.
Recital. Thank you. Perfect. A choral recital. And then we went to go participate and support her. And I remember that her grade was just not on pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like very squeaky and squawky. It's like there's a couple people that are maybe carrying the melody. The rest of them are kind of lingering and falling in and out of tune. And it's very wavery. And they also aren't even landing on the syllables at the same time as each other. So it starts to sound like that cluttered voice, And I just remember sitting there looking at this, and first of all, my younger cousin was there, so there's like a family connection, right?
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking like, this is so beautiful, because here are some young people who are learning to create, learning to express, learning to put something out, and to do it together, and to do it for people, and to have this artistic expression. And these are just the first baby steps. But like when you see a baby walk for the first time, you're not like, this stupid baby sucks at walking. You know what I mean? You don't critique it. You go like, wow.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had that moment, and it's really stuck with me where, like, in terms of music, it could really be anything.
Yeah.
And I think we could find beauty in it because of the fact that it is a creation. It is a representation and an expression. So just to bounce that back to you, particularly from a father's point of view, I'm sure you get some drawings and stuff, and you probably hear songs at home and stuff. Like, how does that hit you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's them starting to express themselves, right? Like my oldest daughter always says that she wants to be an artist one day, right? And when she grows up, like that's like a big part of her expression. She loves to draw. She loves to like sing. She loves to do stuff like that, right? She's playing piano now. And that's another expression of artistic stuff that she does. And no, I think it's fantastic. I think the things that she's into, that in the drawings she makes, they're all beautiful because it was her who produced them, who created them, right? And I could tell it came from a place where she was creating, where she was excited about it, where she had maybe a vision or some passion or some, it just means a lot to her. She in particular, when I was younger, like when she was younger, used to always like maybe bring me 6-7 drawings a day. And I do my best to keep most of them.
That's crazy.
Just
That's a lot.
Just to keep them aside, right? Because she loved to do it. And she's always been like that. Like she'll like want to make a little drawing for every kid in the class. Like she's kind of quit that now, but in earlier grades, like this was kind of her thing, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
So you've had to deal with that sort of parenthood moment where you're like, what do I do with all these?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I try to keep most of them. Some of them, obviously, we don't keep them all, right?
Do you guys have like a big bin or something that you fill with them?
Yeah,
to keep
kind
them,
of. Yeah. I keep them in a little folder, sort of an idea. And sometimes I'll make sure that they stay out because I want her to see them, that they're out and that they're meaningful and that I actually do take time. And I think I bought one from her. I gave her cash for one.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Because she was like doing paintings on whiteboards, and I just wanted to kind of surprise her once, and so I gave her $5 for it.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
very.
Because I want her to see that it was worth something, right?
Yeah.
So
You're teaching her that there's value in people.
Exactly.
For that, yeah. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that kind of segues us to the other side of the conversation, because we're both on the same page. At least here, we're on the same page that art is or beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So art will be, appreciated or not, depending on who's observing or who's created it, right?
Yeah.
So I think personally that art is like the act of creating, the act of actually using that sort of spiritual expression that we have within us is a reflection of divinity. Like I think it's something that when we create, we're reflecting God. Like we're doing what the Creator has done. And I think that that's like a spark within us that is unique to humanity. And I think there's like an intrinsic beauty to just creation and art in general. So with that though, do you think that art can be bad in the sense of like
negative? Yeah.
Can art be like a net loss for humanity? So think about the broadest spectrum. Like think about art in galleries, graffiti in streets. Think about, the most intense music with most harsh lyrics and versus like
music's the one I would think of when answering this question, probably.
Yeah.
To an extent. Well, music probably. You can get it in painting sometimes. Movies, definitely, for sure, right? In those expressions. Can it be negative? I think definitely that if... I think like people, it depends how people identify with these things too, right? Because some people like identify like so close to the art that they love, right? That they almost become or want to become.
It's part of their
like,
identity.
like the artist kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And do some people do negative art, like art that can lead to negativity? I think so. I think in its nature, sometimes it can lead people down that path. I'm not always convinced that that's always the intent of the person doing the creation.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do think that some people, especially because like when an artist puts something out into the world, they throw it out there and it's up to us to decide what we're going to do with it. Right.
Yeah.
And some of us, that's not for me. We stay away and we just, whatever, we go into something different or something else is for us. So we just go to that. Right.
Yeah.
But if something is, to an extent, especially lyrics, are screaming negativity and someone's like identifying with that 110%, like it could probably influence you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you because I think, well, here's one of the reasons I've been thinking about this more and more as well, is because I think just like you're talking about the presidential debate, we live in a world where there's like pretty big propensity for people to create rifts between themselves. And as humans, we, for good reasons and bad, want to understand who are you versus who am I, and who are we versus who are they. And I think as Christians, the call of Christ is actually that there is no other any longer. There's no they.
Exactly.
We're all us. So the other that you might try to create of somebody who's beyond your borders or your community or even your culture, they're not them. They are us. They're just differently than us. Like we are expressed in multiple places and ways. So the reason I bring that up is because we live in a world where this is not new, but people create divides between themselves. We create divides between each other, and we call you them and us me.
Okay.
And I think it applies to art, and I think it applies to Christians in art too. And I was thinking recently, how do Christians view art? And sometimes you run across this mentality that I don't think anybody wakes up and decides that this is going to be their mantra, but I think we kind of fall into it when we fall into like subcultures like church settings, where people say secular is other, that's them, and we have our stuff. And if it's not our stuff, then we don't appreciate it. We don't think it's good. We think it's bad. And so you can kind of see why I've been thinking about this
100%.
that way, right? Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying there for sure, right? And like all art is an expression of the person, and and a lot of it's beautiful. And whether it lines up necessarily 100% with your worldview and culture, you can still appreciate another person's art. Do you know what I mean? You can still appreciate another person's song. You can still appreciate an artistic expression, right? Like most Christian people I know watch movies that aren't lining up with their exact expression of life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But they still enjoy them, or a TV show or something like that, right? But you could still see, like, even the news, for crying out loud, a really good news anchor like that. There's an art to that. Do you know what I mean? Like when I watch a guy like Matt on CTV or something like that, just to throw a local out, right? Like you could tell he's mastered his craft. He's good at it, right?
Yeah, I think
so. There's something to celebrate in the fact that they are creating and that they are living out what they're doing. Yeah,
it's an expression, right? And I think that one of the things that can be concerning to me is when, and this isn't everybody, so like I'm really trying not to paint in broad strokes here, but when we sometimes find ourselves in those sort of subculture pockets, where they say, well, this is other, so that's just not good. That's not, it's not even a statement of that's not for me, or I don't, this isn't my daily driver music or my daily driving band.
It's a complete separation, as though I have no part of this
good and
person.
bad. And that's the thing that kind of bothers me, is that if art is an expression and it's something, a creative endeavor that if like for me personally, I believe that it's a reflection of the creator when we create.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the product is always God honoring, but I believe that it's a genuine expression of humanity that we could all connect with if we're honest with it.
Yeah.
You know, and to reject the art is to reject the person, and to say, well, that, you know, you are outside, I'm not, you know. And so I'm not, by the way, just for anybody watching and listening, I'm not saying, hey, you got to go listen to I'm trying to think of like an edgy artist or something
intense.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to go listen to, you know.
Yeah.
I can't think of an edgy artist right now.
Well,
can you help me with somebody?
Well, just I'm lost for it at the moment too.
You don't have to listen to Lil Nas X or something.
There you go.
Right? You
Perfect.
don't have to.
You got it.
I mean, he's a marketing genius in the sense that he's intentionally divisive because it gets him more attention. But you don't have to go listen to that person and enjoy that. But to recognize that is a piece of creation that is a representation of humanity. And I mean, the complications get in when you talk about art in terms of industry.
Yeah.
Because then there's money involved and people.
Oh,
are
for
really,
sure.
You know,
for sure.
People are more.
Yeah.
It's like industrialized in a lot of
Well,
ways in
definitely.
some senses.
And
But
a lot of art is made. Let's just say there's an easier route to creating art in certain in certain places, right?
ultra palatable or whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely but like definitely like you're making me think. The last time I went to the art gallery here in the city and just looking at paintings and stuff, and the last time I went, it was the subject matter. This was a while ago. This was like 2 years ago, I think. And producer Ashley came with me. And I think it was COVID was what the whole room was about the pandemic, and not just the actual pandemic itself, but everything that came with it. So you saw artistic expressions, that the whole thing was just lined with paintings and different expressions. And the ones that hit me the hardest looking in there were like the paintings that showed loneliness. Yeah. Because obviously that was something that was very prevalent during the pandemic, right? But lots of beautiful expression there, and lots of talent. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say I think this has been a good parlay in terms of just conversation about what do you think about this? I wonder what viewers think about it, listeners think about it as well. I would say a good challenge for anybody who's encouraged or, you know, maybe feeling a little bit challenged by what we're saying is like, why not try listening to a different voice in music or observing a different voice, as it were, in visual art or, you know, whatever, like, or try a different, because I think that when we extend ourselves, it doesn't mean we have to all of a sudden become the biggest Drake fans on the planet. But sometimes when you hear somebody's voice, it helps you to learn to hear somebody without creating a divide and saying, well, you use this language or you said this way, and so I'm not hearing you at all. Because the reality is when we broaden that out from art and we start talking about just interacting with people, if we close our ears to language we don't approve of or sentiments we don't approve of, political views, whatever, you could just keep extending this. What are we closing our ears to and saying you are other? Yeah.
Us
versus
versus,
how much
us
do
versus
we...
them, us versus them, right? Yeah.
And versus how much are we embracing people and saying, I hear or I observe your expression and I don't need to... Yeah. Well, even I don't even need to approve of this.
It's not for me.
I don't even need to like this, but like
true.
I hear you and I see that you're expressing yourself. Because I mean, you go out there, people are going to talk ways you don't want them to talk. So
agreed. Yeah.
How much are you able to connect with those people? So that's it for Parley. Wonder if anybody has thoughts, you're welcome to comment or give us feedback on that. We'll see how that goes. But I think now it's time, if you're ready, for In the Neighbourhood.
In the Neighbourhood.
Sounds good. Yeah. A couple weeks ago, I talked about, I think my text was 1 Peter 1, verse 18 to chapter 2, verse 3. And the idea in the text was basically Peter's making a distinction that it's all because of Jesus for the Christian, that everything is everything.
Everything's because of Jesus.
Go back to the source. Your cornerstone, some songs say, right? Like the foundation of listening to him and doing his word kind of thing, right? And Peter goes on to suggest that there's an old way of living and a new way of living, much what you see all throughout the epistles. Like, I think I read about 6 different accounts of that from Paul, where he talked about take this off but put on the new way, or take this off but put on the clothe yourselves with Christ, do this, do that, right? And there's old, new, old, new, old, new. And in this verse that I talked about a couple weeks ago, he says that the new way of a way a Christian should conduct themselves is to love one another deeply from your hearts. But then he says here in chapter 2, verse 1, the old way is rid yourself of all malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. So there's these two ways of living, right? And one way used to be so important to us, but when you met Jesus, your priorities started to become in alignment with his priorities, and your heart became in alignment with his heart, right? And you start to embrace what he wanted. That's what Peter's suggesting should happen, and that should happen.
Okay, yeah.
But then he says this verse, and this is where I kind of parked on. He says, like newborn babies crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. And I love the idea of framing living our lives for God with the fact that we know he's good, that we've tasted it. And have you ever tried to describe and taste to someone before?
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
hard, eh?
It could be, you're always just trying to allude to something else that they've tasted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the only way to really experience it yourself is to taste it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Peter's saying. He's saying now that you've tasted that God is good, like newborn babies crave pure spiritual milk. And that's a whole funny verse in and of itself, because like babies naturally crave milk, right? Like, and I remember with my daughters, going back to when Zara was a baby, right? Like I know this because Zara wanted to eat all the time, but she often ate throughout the night too. So like I remember one time waking up and complaining that I only got 6 hours of sleep, and my wife like eye rolled me at that point, right? Because like she'd been up 4 times throughout the night feeding the baby kind of thing, right? Yeah. And but Peter's tapping into that natural idea of babies eat, to suggest how we're supposed to crave the spiritual things of God, right?
It's just like instinctual.
The things of God, yeah, we're supposed to want it, right? And I threw the talk for a little loop, and maybe you can comment on this, because I did say at the same time sometimes we do create our own cravings. And I'll give you an example. Okay. So the first time I tried coffee, I was probably 8 years old. So my dad drank pots of it. He was a miner. He worked in the mine in northern Manitoba, and he drank pots of coffee. Like I'm not lying, like 3 a day probably.
That's insane.
And just drank it and just sat there drinking coffee. And as a young kid, you start to think, well, this has to be the best stuff on earth, because like he's drinking it so much.
Yeah.
But he told me it was an adult drink, and I wasn't allowed to have any. And so I just respected that. And I think one day when I was 8 years old, I just bugged him enough that he probably just said, "Go ahead and have a sip," right?
Yep.
So I took a sip of his coffee, and when I was preaching, I joked that all of a sudden it was the most heavenly flavor I've ever experienced, right? It was like, the best thing I've ever tasted, right? Which is a joke, because because I spit it out probably, right? It probably ran into a sink.
First sip of coffee is bad.
Well, yeah, for a kid it's terrible, right? Because we don't have a taste for it, right?
Yeah.
And fast forward 6 years is what I said, till when I was 14. And all of a sudden going for coffee in the town I lived in was a thing to do. So we'd sit around, pour crafts of coffee all night. And before you know it, I grew a taste for it. Before you knew it, the first thing in the morning, I was actually craving it, right? I developed a craving for something that I didn't like at first, but because of constant use and repetition, all of a sudden I had a craving for it.
Yeah.
And coffee's a perfect example, because I've yet to meet, I know very few people whose first experience with coffee was, this is great.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
Wait, did you say very few?
Very few.
Okay.
Whose
sorry.
first
All right,
experience is, this is great.
Yeah.
Even if they tried as a 20-year-old.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's still that level of like, this is kind of bitter. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand the taste of this, right?
And I bet the people that did like it quicker probably had an analog in their life.
Yeah.
Like something else that was more bitter and strong. And
yes, I would
right?
think so, right?
Yeah.
So, and me and you talk about this all the time. I think we're the opposite on this. I could drink black coffee. I can't drink black tea.
Yeah, I'll drink black tea all day.
But you don't like coffee black, right?
Well, yeah, no, I need to have like a dessert or
something,
biscotti or something with it if I'm gonna have black tea. Yeah. I mean coffee. Sorry.
And I don't know why that is, because I prefer tea and I drink tea more, but it's got to have a little milk in it.
Yeah.
And maybe half a teaspoon of sugar or something.
Yeah.
Just enough to sort of perk it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But the coffee, I could just pour a little cream in, or even drink it black and just go with it.
Yeah.
And I'd be okay with that.
Because you developed the taste.
I did, yeah. And so I developed that craving in that sense. So Peter's saying some cravings are natural, and we all crave God naturally, and we all should, crave pure spiritual milk like this, right? And part of me, when I was thinking through this on a personal level, is I think as you read the Bible, as you pray, as you develop some of these spiritual disciplines, like Richard Foster calls them, you just start to crave them, right?
Yeah.
You could develop your own craving that way too.
Yeah.
So
there's a huge connection in scripture between what we eat, what we consume, in comparison to our spiritual life.
Yeah.
Like hunger and thirst is a big thing all through scripture.
You see it all the time, right?
I think it's like very, like God gets us. That's why it's like why his spirit has inspired scripture that reference this so clearly, because it's so clearly us, you know?
Yeah.
I think we can even probably recognize that we can begin to crave things that aren't good for us.
Yes.
Like, have you ever been stuck on a McDonald's kick?
Yeah.
Where you're just like, I just need some more McDonald's fries or whatever.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank, whatever it is,
But
right?
It's just the idea of it, you crave it sometimes, right?
Yeah. You're like, that would be
eat,
so
then
good
you
right
eat
now.
it and you're like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right?
Like you don't even enjoy it for 5 minutes.
Right?
Yeah. But that's an example of how I think we can develop cravings for things that aren't good for us. And I think sometimes Christians, particularly new Christians, so anybody who's coming to the Christian faith to explore it, who's developing a taste for the spiritual food that would be available through the Christian faith, I think that they're going to have a natural sort of resistance sometimes to changing what they're nourishing themselves with, because we can all develop and rely on different cravings that aren't necessarily fulfilling, but we have to discipline ourselves to recognize, well, this is better. Like there's something better than McDonald's. Because once you I'm sure you'll get this too. Once you stop eating McDonald's for a month, sorry, McDonald's, I'm just picking on you. I'm not sorry to the corporation, but for anybody who works there, I'm sorry.
You don't think about it anymore, right?
But you lose the taste for it, and you're not craving it because and it actually becomes like offensive to you, right?
Yeah.
You ever go through like a diet cleanse where you're like eating clean whole foods, and then somebody's like, "You want to go to McDonald's?" And you're like, "No." You ever have that?
Oh, yeah. Experiencing it as we speak. Yeah.
You get it out of your system, right? Yeah. So I think that sometimes for like newer Christians, just in terms of cravings and spiritual life, it's normal to say, well, I enjoy the things that I crave in my life now. Like I enjoy the things that give me my hit of dopamine. I enjoy the things that help me be settled and grounded. I enjoy the things that make me feel alive, you know? So you could fill in the blank with any manner of lifestyle, but the recognition that it's good to establish a craving that is better for you.
Yeah, I agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right. Like negative, positive craving works the same, right? It's just a matter of which way you decide to go on this, right?
Yeah.
So no. And so I found it interesting that Peter was using that crave pure spiritual milk thing, so that by it you might grow up in your salvation, right? Like there's a growth aspect, and for babies to grow, they have to have milk. Like, so there's a natural process, right? For Christians to grow, there's milk too, right? And there's portions. I could have gone into this. I didn't go into it, but in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews talks about milk as like elementary teachings, like of the faith, which is like eternal salvation, different things, right? End times, like there's a list of them. And then Paul talks about milk sometimes being for the young, and meat being for the mature.
Right.
So
chew on it.
Yeah. So there is those connections you could look at as well. But I think at the end of the day, I think what Peter's trying to say is that, you need to crave the right things, and you need to crave the things of God. That's how most commentators put it. Crave the things of God, right?
Yeah.
And by that you'll grow in your salvation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we have a natural craving that leads us towards God, but at the same time, I think we could also develop one too with use.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. For sure.
So you can leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll tie it into the parlay real quick.
Okay.
So, because we're talking about, that music is something that you could develop like a taste for, right? And so I think just a quick little note that like when we're talking about exploring different expressions and stuff, it doesn't mean it has to become something you crave, right? You can still crave good expression, right? Like something that's edifying and affirming to you, but it doesn't mean that you have to start craving things that are contrary to your like viewpoints and stuff, right? Just a little touch on that, because I'm thinking about, sometimes I talk to young people who are like, I just crave that, really violent music and like music with like really harsh language and stuff. And I'm like, okay, but why?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a jump in the conversation there, just to tie that back to the parlay. But I mean, that sounds like it was a pretty awesome sermon, Jordan.
Well, it was
good talk.
It was fun to talk to. Yeah, through. I enjoyed the study.
Yeah.
Peter's book I find quite complex, So he has lots of Old Testament quotations. He has
Yeah.
lots of foundational things. And then he throws these practical living instructions in between.
Yeah.
So bringing it together, I find, is a good challenge. I had fun with it. So
Yeah, right on.
yeah,
Well, you're good at that sort of stuff, so that's awesome.
enjoy it.
Well, that's In the Neighborhood for this week. So let's move on to How About You?
How about you?
We have some feedback from last week. Last week we were asking favorite. What do we ask? Favorite genre?
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Favorite
That's right.
genre,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, okay. For a second, I was just thinking about the monoliths
Yeah.
the whole time. I just remember the monoliths. But yeah, so favorite genre we had asked last time, and you had said that your favorite genre was ska. I remember. You just can't get enough of that ska.
Just can't quit listening to ska. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, no.
And we had also just asked a little bit about 2001 Space Odyssey and the feed item that we had talked about
That's
was
right.
monoliths appearing in 2020.
Mhm.
And somebody commented and actually said that they saw a monolith in 2021 in Saskatoon.
Oh,
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I didn't know that happened. And it makes
That's
me wonder,
news to me.
are there like copycats maybe?
Could
you
be.
know, why Saskatoon? Like
Yeah.
that's
well, it became a thing. I could sort of see it being
Yeah.
a copycat thing. Yeah.
people are just doing it now. Do you think
Yeah.
that 2024 one, like this one that came up in June, do you think that that one's a copycat one or something? I mean, you
I
had
don't
said
know.
you had said on record that you thought it was like a military thing or something,
It could
or
be,
it was
yeah.
there for a purpose.
It was there for
what
a
you said.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think that there's a purpose behind it, but it could just be for fun too, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
So
so it might not be a
it's-
copycat.
I
if it's
wouldn't be
there.
taking any like direct 100% stances on anything when it comes to this. Yeah. So that's funny that one was in
Yeah.
Saskatoon though. It makes sense though, because you know, just when something gets going, it pops up sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely it does. Yeah. So do you want to highlight any comments or anything this week, or
what do we have in there?
oh, you don't have your computer with you?
I did not. This is the first time I did not bring it with me.
That's all good. So we just had there's a comment that a monolith appeared in Saskatoon in 2021.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a comment about our hockey conversation. So I want to
Okay.
throw this back to you here
Yeah,
too.
I want to hear it.
So the comment says the problem with having a Canadian team is that was talking about winning the Stanley Cup, right? Is that most people say they want a Canadian team to win, but they only want it to be their team.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Like, I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan through and through.
Yep.
And that's the Canadian team I'm cheering for. But I'm cheering for them because they're my team, right?
Yeah.
But there's some Canadian teams I'm a little more gracious towards and would probably root for.
Mhm.
But others that have become rivals throughout the years, like, how do you root for rivals all of a sudden? Like, there's rivalries for a reason.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean this in like a mean way. It's just fun. Like, rivalries are good in sports.
Just for
That's
no
what makes-
for no
That's what
deeper reason.
Like you're not going to turn on soccer and see like, you know, Liverpool fans like passionately cheering for Man U. You know, it's just not going to happen, right? And it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It's offensive. And just because, you
It's
know, I
offensive.
think what a lot of people have done at this is that they separate hockey into like the South and the North, right?
Mm.
Meaning Canada and the USA. And I just don't see it that way. I see it as North America. And a lot of these American teams have more Canadian players on them than a lot of these Canadian teams do. And that's just been proven, right?
Mm.
And so to me, I don't get into the whole Canada's team thing. I understand that most of the nation, especially people who aren't like crazy passionate into sports, like can jump behind the Oilers in a season like this. And it was cool to see. And I enjoyed it. I was happy about it, you know?
Mhm.
Those parties outside, like before the game, like they had like live concerts and like I think Shania Twain played one night, and that's pretty big, right? Like
Yeah.
they had a big party out there, and I think a lot of people got into the excitement. I knew friends who didn't even watch sports at all, like and that you don't watch many sports at all, right? You said,
Yep.
So texting me being like, "Well, I hope the Oilers pulled this off," and I'm like, wait a second, like, like even you're into this, so it is
Yeah.
cool to see,
Yeah.
you know, people come behind a team. And like I said last episode, I'd have been happy if the Oilers won. I would have celebrated with them
Mm.
in the sense of like, you know, it's hard work to get 16 games won in a playoffs, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to finish that and win 16, like, and win the cup is just hats off to you, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I understand what the comment's saying is that when it comes to Canada's team, you're really cheering for your team, right?
Yeah.
And then you get some people who are from Canada whose teams are in America, and it might even
Yeah.
be tougher for them to, or maybe easier for them to embrace. I don't know. it can go either way here.
Yeah, I really get what he's saying, because I think there's levels to these things, like particularly like you're saying, the rivalries and stuff.
Yeah.
Some people would take this crazy seriously, like they would commit crimes for these rivalries, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the more stable individuals would
Yeah.
be like, well, this is like, we only care about this because we decided to care about it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's more fun to make this a whole thing, right? I mean, you could correct me if you're wrong, but from a non-sports person, that's what I see around the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But I think that there's a breakdown on different levels of that. So I
Yeah.
see what he's saying, where it's like when we go to the Olympics, it's like it doesn't matter
Yeah.
who's on what team in the Canadian hockey team.
Yeah.
You just want Canada to win.
We're cheering Canada in the Olympics.
Cheer
and
Canada.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. So
That-
they
that's
could
'cause
be like,
it's literally country versus country, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I mean, so there's a breakdown there, right? Where it's
Yeah.
just a completely different, it's not like the National Hockey League. But I think, you know, it makes sense that there would be sort of, in my mind, it's like, why not just like, okay, your team's out, so take a step back. What's the next bigger picture? Well, Canada, so cheer for whatever Canadian team. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that just makes sense. But
Yeah.
I've never been, you know, big into,
Yeah.
I've never
Well,
repped a team.
And I think that's why the nation came behind them, is because like a lot of people, especially, and then there's certain players like Connor McDavid's the best player in the world, right? He won the Conn Smythe, which is the MVP of the playoffs, but he didn't win the cup, and that's only happened maybe 5 or 6 other times.
Okay.
And it's usually the goalie. I think he's the first forward who ever was given that award,
Hmm.
because normally they give that award to a winner, not to someone who lost the series.
Right.
But like I think a lot of people can root for a guy like him and say we want our Captain Canada here to win a cup, and I get that, and I could root for that too, right?
Right, yeah.
I read a book a few years back about band rivalries, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it said what your favorite bands actually say about you, and they broke down different band rivalries throughout the ages, like Rolling Stones, Beatles obviously was a big one, right?
Yeah.
Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
Which is an easy one.
Blur, Oasis, which is my favorite one.
That's an easy one too.
Yeah, so
You would pick Blur, right?
I'd pick Blur, yeah,
Obviously.
in a
Yeah,
heartbeat.
okay, that's good.
But these things though, you know, say interesting stuff, and it was fun to read about it, because rivalries sometimes, I don't know, they create culture, they make the world go around in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So
There's
to use an expression,
Yeah, there's a level of things where we just enjoy things because we decided
it's just
that
fun
we will. Yeah.
to have a challenge or to kind of clash at, right?
Yeah,
Try-
yeah.
keep it healthy though.
Yeah. Lots of people don't like it when I say this,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say it because you probably won't like it as well.
Yeah.
But honestly, even sports, it's all just imaginary anyways. Just think about it. Just humor me for a second, because like hockey, so like first of all, athletes are incredible.
Mhm.
They deserve their, you know, recognition for getting really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything against that, but it's imaginary. We say between these places, if you move that thing there, then you get a point. What is a point?
Yeah.
It's just, well, we just made it up. It's just an imaginary game that you used to play as a kid, except now it's got a league and it's got billions of dollars behind it. And it's like, now we give people careers in it. But like when you take a step back, it's like, do we really need to be hating people over this? Because
Yes.
it's all just
Yeah.
made up.
Yeah.
Like sports are just games.
Yeah.
They're just people having fun.
Well, and that's the thing. Like my rivalries, like my biggest rival is probably the Saskatchewan Roughriders, because I'm a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan.
Yeah.
And but I love Rider fans. I think they're great for the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They got a passionate fan base, and those rivalries are fun for me. Like
Yeah.
Labor Day wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for that fight. But at the end of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day, love each other. At the end of the day, right? Like it's just football.
That's actually yes, you
just football.
Exactly. And
So-
you've brought up something that's one of the reasons why I don't cheer for the Riders.
Yeah.
I'll watch them.
Yeah.
And I'm from Saskatchewan, so I'm happy if they win stuff.
Okay.
But one of the reasons I'm not like vehement is because when I moved from Manitoba to Saskatchewan,
People came at you.
it was insane.
I
People
know.
were straight up rude to me
I
all the
know.
time. And I was like, I don't even care about the Blue Bombers. Why are you? And then the amount of vehement people who were like, you know, you have to cheer for Saskatchewan. Well, that just triggered like defiance in me.
Yes.
And I was just like, I will never cheer for the Riders
In
because
one,
you
out
tell
the
me
other
I
at that
have to,
point.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, that was a breakdown where it's like, you're taking a game and you're just like being rude to people about it now. So
Yeah.
you've crossed the line so far as I'm
I agree.
concerned.
I
you know,
agree.
so-
I agree. Rivalries are fun,
excited.
but keep them fun.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. That's right. I'm excited for all the hate I'm going to get for saying
Yeah.
that sports are imaginary and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
But we'll see how that goes. Well, it's been a full episode. It's been a good episode. We've got lots that we went through. I think we're done, right?
Absolutely.
We
us-
have to be done.
Yeah. Let us know what you think of art. What's your favorite kind of art? Music, movies, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Any
Interested.
feedback on our conversations today would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome.
We'll catch you next week for episode 9.
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.